The Girl in the Cellar is inspired by the true story of a tortured girl, all by the hands of her very own father. But I'm here to tell you what really happened, because trust me when I say this, the true events are a lot worse. Hey, it's Genevia, and welcome to Mystery Digest, where every Sunday or Monday I cover true crime cases, paranormal cases, and other mystery-related content. Today we're talking about the true story behind the movie Girl in the Basement starring Stephanie Scott. This is a very traumatic piece with lots of adult themes. As such, I will be displaying a content warning and scene. This is the story of a woman who was born to the very man who was going to be her captor and abuser for decades. I'm giving a full rundown of all the events that led to Elizabeth Fritzl getting kidnapped by her father, Joseph Fritzle, who hid her in a soundproof basement where she was raped over 3,000 times and had 7 children. I'll be covering the bases that the movie did not, and I'm giving an extra warning here because trust me, it gets dark. Like I thought, because it's based off of true events, they're gonna try and capitalize off of like the worst of the story, but that was not the case. So you have been warned. Now, as much as I'd hate to center this story around Joseph Fritzle in the slightest, that's honestly where the story started. His childhood. His toxic relationship with his mother. Joseph Fritzle was born and raised in Amstetten, Australia. He was abandoned by his dad when he was 4 years old and spent the rest of his, maturing life with his mom. And to put it frankly, his mother was very abusive. Fritzle went as far as to testify that his mother was the only thing on this planet that he feared. She would beat him so badly until he fell on the floor and was bleeding. She'd demean him, call him useless, call him the devil himself, call him a criminal. I mean, I don't know if she could see the future, but sis was right. Oh, she was right. Regardless of whether or not she was a contributing factor. He was almost cut off from any sense of freedom and self-expression. He wasn't allowed to have friends. He wasn't allowed to participate in anything that wasn't directly school related, not even sports. This in turn led Joseph to develop a cold and violent personality under the guise of a cool and collected persona. He did pretty well in school. In fact, he was a really good student. He became an electrical engineer, and those skills definitely helped him in building a certain cellar. So this isn't the kind of man you'd see and go, yep, definitely a sleaze, let me walk across the street. He looked like he had his life together, like he was a decent man. No. Eventually, he moved and got married to Rosemary, that's Elizabeth's mom, where they had 7 children, including Elizabeth, who was the middle child. Here's one of the things the movie did not mention. Before kidnapping, torturing, and raping his daughter, he supposedly practiced on his wife. During extensive sessions with a psychiatrist, he confessed that he fully repaid all the mistreatment that he got from his mother to his wife, moving from being the victim to the executioner. He would lock his wife up on the upper floor of their house, bricked up the windows, and became her jailer. He didn't specify how long he was doing this, but some speculate that it was over 10 years. Even with the immense physical violence that he was committing, the sexually violent behaviors manifested in the 1960s when he was accused of raping a woman, and he was later convicted for that crime. He said this to his psychiatrist during one of their sessions. Y'all hold on for this one. Cleared my throat, instilling the audacity. I was born for rape, and despite this, I held back for a long time. Not this man wanting a medal for doing below the bare minimum. Like, the math ain't mathing. The math is not mathing. The abuse before the capture. In the movie Girl in the Basement, the film depicted Elizabeth and her abuser to have a rocky and tension-filled relationship. But they did not include the fact that he was molesting her since she was 11 years old. But after 7 to 8 years of doing this and creating a cellar in his basement, he drugged her, knocked her out, and kept her in said cellar for over 2 decades. 24 years. He was quoted saying in one of his psychiatry sessions, again, clearing the throat, instilling the audacity. The urge to have sex with Elizabeth grew stronger and stronger, and that's what motivated him to do what he did. Now hold up. If you ever find yourself at any point in life being tempted to do something like that, just disappear. And for legal reasons, I can't say how, but you can use your imagination. Because if you find yourself creating a literal sex dungeon or making any type of plans, we can all agree, like as a people, that that's the point in time where you disappear. Anyways, for the first 2 days, he kept her cuffed. And for 9 months following, he kept her tied up as an extra precaution to keep her from escaping. Fritzl would then visit the chamber once a day or 3 times a week. And during that time, he'd rape Elizabeth repeatedly and subject her to immense abuse and torture. And where in the movie she had 4 children and 1 died, in real life, she gave birth to 7 kids, 7 children, fathered by her father, and 1 died. 3 of them were sent upstairs to live with their grandmother and their dad/grandfather. The other 3 were left to live with her. And apparently, the 3 that lived with the grandmother and father had relatively normal lives. Now, Joseph supposedly gave a plausible story as to how the 3 children showed up at their doorstep. You see, he would have her write notes attached to each child. And early on in the kidnapping, he tried to sell the narrative of Elizabeth running away to join a cult, which, because she ran away before, it was a lot more believable to the police, and apparently somewhat good enough for her mom. So the children were registered as Elizabeth's fondlings. So they were known as Elizabeth's kids, but they were sent home to be taken care of because of the cult or financial reasons. In the small and compartmentalized cellar, Elizabeth and her children literally had to dig at the walls to create more space inside. There were 2 bedrooms, each at about 3 meters squared. There was a really small bathroom, a small kitchen, and a small laundry area. And get this, the only source of ventilation was a single tube. 1 single tube. And this source of ventilation would be cut off if he felt like they should be punished for something they did, any form of bad behavior. And not only that, he would threaten to gas the children if Elizabeth ever tried to escape. But how in hot hell did he get away with keeping them in that cellar for so long? Surely someone would have, noticed something? You'd think so, wouldn't you? The cool, calm, and collected persona he developed came in handy, because he was actually known as a nice person, a well-respected person in the community. So no one was ever going to look at him and go, "Sir, why you been raping your daughter? What's the deal with that? Where is your child? You have something to do with that." No, that wasn't going to be like an immediate response to anyone who saw him. He made people, especially his wife, believe that the frequent trips he was making to the basement was for work purposes, and it's a soundproof cellar. So the funny thing is, he had a tenant on the ground floor of the building. A tenant was living just above Elizabeth and her children. The noises that he heard, he went to Fritzl and was like, "Yo, I've been hearing some noises, sir, and I don't know what it is." And Fritzl was able to convince him that, "Don't worry, King. It's just the pipes. The pipes, honey. Don't worry about it. It's just the pipes." And Mr. Tenant ate it up. I mean, Fritzl was a nice guy, So being that everything was seemingly working in his favor, how did he get caught? It was the fortunately unfortunate illness of one of the children in the cellar that ironically ended up being somewhat of a ray of hope for Elizabeth and her kids. The oldest, Kirsten, who was suffering from a life-threatening kidney disease. It was so bad that Fritzl decided that he was going to call the ambulance. And that was on April 19, 2008. And she was admitted. Now the doctors were wondering, why she's so pale? If alive, why pale? She's never. Sunlight is not a thing in this girl's entire 19 years of life. Sunlight, never heard of her, does not exist. She's never experienced it. So severe lack of vitamin D on top of her kidney failure. Sis was looking pasty. And the doctors could not find any medical records on her. So they were like, hey, yo, sir, you ain't got anything for us. We need to speak to her mom. Now, of course, Fritzl being Fritzl, he was like, you know what, let me just cook up a story. Luckily, the doctors did not eat that shit up. They were not hungry for that type of information. Nope. They found the story, to say the least, a bit off. So they said 911, something's fishy here. The police were called in. So the police reopened the case of Elizabeth's disappearance. Why? Fritzl was still saying that Kirsten was Elizabeth's child, even though she was one of the 3 kids that were living with them. He presented her as Elizabeth's child. He was still trying to push the idea of like, yeah, she's off with the cult. She's probably not gonna come. And the police were like, is that so? Is that so? Because they had specialists like really take a minute to look into it. And the cult that he was claiming she was in does not exist. And the letters that he was presenting that Elizabeth supposedly wrote of her own free will kinda looked a bit forced. So during this investigation, now on knowing that she needed to be there for her daughter, Elizabeth was like, yo, I need to go see my kid. I need to be there for my child. Because Elizabeth was vital to Kirsten's survival. She had information that she needed to relay. It would look too fishy on Fritzl's side to be like, yeah, she can't come, but you know, I got the info though. So surprisingly, he said, you know what? And he presented this lie that he just cooked up, that Elizabeth was back from the cult, yes, and this is the other kids. These are the other children, and they're back because she is concerned about her kids' health. Then both Elizabeth and her father went to the hospital where they were both detained. Because at first they thought, okay, she's an abusive mom and her child being this ill is a major red flag. But after the police promised that she would never have to see her father again, she told them about the 24 years of torture she went through by the hands of her own father. And it almost seemed too over the top to be true at first for the police officers, but you know, things were kind of adding up. Now, on the note of Elizabeth's mother not suspecting her husband, I know I'm just a random person on the internet that decided to do some research and now is talking in front of a camera. So my opinions, a grain of salt, take it with that. But something's fishy to me about the mom not realizing. I mean, there must have been signs. She was being molested from she was 11 years old. And according to Fritzl, she herself was held captive by her husband. And you didn't think, let me check in that basement you've been in so much. And you were married to him for so long. And I understand that some people are just really good at hiding things. But the math ain't mathing. The physics ain't physicsing. And the chemistry ain't chemisting. Right? That's all I'm saying. This man was so proficient in what he did, the police thought he definitely had accomplices. But after gathering more information, it came to light that he was the only one involved. Fritzl owned multiple properties, so he was able to move around quite a bit. He wasn't quite restricted like with his time schedule when it came to work. This also means that he could afford good security for his cellar. There was a bookcase in the basement that hid the entrance to the cellar. Behind the bookcase was a 661-pound concrete sliding door in which you had to put in a code to get through, and of course, he was the only one who knew the code. Fritzl was charged and convicted of the murder of the baby that died, rape, incest, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and slavery. That is quite the list, sir. In between him getting arrested and convicted, he was subjected to various psychiatric and psychological testing to see if, he had any mental illness going on. He had none. And his defense was then trying to push the narrative of, he was drunk. He was drinking too much. For 24 years. For 24 years. That didn't fly. That didn't stick. That wasn't working. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for 15 years. On one hand, how is parole even an option? But at the same time, he's pretty old. He'd probably die by then. I think it's 2 years until he's eligible for parole. And as far as anyone can tell, he intends on staying behind bars. What happened to Elizabeth and her family afterwards? Well, Elizabeth was released from custody, and her family were sent into a psychiatric facility to get treatment, both physical and mental. Elizabeth got her name changed, and she and her family moved to somewhere else in Australia, where they are actively doing their best at, returning to normalcy or achieving a sense of normalcy in their life. She lost so many years of her life to that cellar and her father, that now she's determined to live the rest of her life in activity, as she should. Last year, she was in a committed relationship with the person that was assigned to be her bodyguard after her release. And the relationship actually helped along with her treatments and helped her to move towards normalcy. Now, to Fritzl's life after being convicted. You'd be pleased to hear that he's in prison and has lost his will to live. As a contrast to when he just got in, convinced that he did nothing wrong. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that one. He's now spending the rest of his time in alienation from the rest of his inmates in solitary confinement, where there are 4 guards guarding him. He lost a few of his teeth in a fight with one of his inmates. So what happened was, a few of his inmates created a fake dating profile for him, kind of to lure him like as a trap, and they knocked a few out. Yes, they did. The Amstetten house was bought and remodeled into 10 separate flats. The basement and cellar has been filled by the Australian authorities to stop other predators, perverts, and pedophiles from going there and worshipping it as a shrine. Like that's an actual thing they had to worry about. Please remember to like this video if you haven't already, and please remember to subscribe and join me every week as I give you more horrible things to listen to. With the exception of my blooper episodes. Those are funny. Those are really funny. You should check those out. Now, as per usual, thoughts and feelings, or should I say thoughts and prayers. What do you guys think about, like, I'm dead set on the mom. I'm dead set on the mom, Elizabeth's mother. What do you guys think about her? Because I can't be the only person coming to that conclusion. It's like, ma'am, what do you mean? Fritzl, how do you guys feel about, like, there's only one way to feel about Joseph Fritzle, and if you're not feeling that one way, you should check yourself. I really hope she and her family, they're doing as well as they possibly could, and they're getting the support that they need to carry on with life, because something as traumatic as that is bound to haunt you for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of another episode. I really appreciate it. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Please remember to like this video if you liked it. Hello. And subscribe if you haven't already. Please do. Thank you. It's down there. You know, that little red button. Yes, sir. Click it. Thank you. And that notification bell too. Don't murder people. Just like don't. And don't create a sex dungeon for your kid. Do not. Let's stay away from doing stuff like that. You know.